Hold on, I gotta turn your mic on. There you go.
Okay.
Do you remember how to do this?
We're trying.
Get yourself situated.
How's this?
Good. Your hand. You can do whatever you want with your hands. I don't care.
Okay.
You gonna sit up straight like that this time, or you gonna sit back and relax?
I've been told I must sit up straight.
All right. Hold on while I adjust your lighting a little bit. There you go.
Fix my hair pretty and everything.
You look good.
After I take a shower, just run my hands through it.
Uh-huh. I always say you look good, Mike. You always look good.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see if we remember how to do this.
Yeah.
You ready?
Yes, sir.
Might take us a take or two, so bear with me. I'm hoping to get it done in the first take, the opening. Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
Oh, your headphones okay?
Turn them up just a bump.
How's that, a little bit better?
That is better.
Okay. Here we go.
And now for something special. The unit is self-contained with its own saddler, farrier, wheelwright and so on. It's a rigorous training dished out who know all there is to know about horses, and it brings results.
We take you behind the scenes now to show just some of the interesting aspects of this training.
Welcome back to Season 5 of Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine, the #1 podcast to create sounder horses from the ground up. Mike Stine is a registered journeyman farrier with an APF-1 accreditation. On this week's show, how the implications of toed in and toed out can be different for young horses versus a fully matured horse, measuring pressures of the flexor tendon in relation to the breakover position, and also talking terminology, sound versus unsound. All this and much, much more will be discussed here on Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. And over to my far end side, welcome back, is Mike Stine. How are you?
I'm doing good, Travis. How are you doing?
Did you have a good? I'm doing well. Did you have a good couple weeks off?
Yes, we did. Yes, we did.
Did you do anything exciting?
Yes.
What did you do exciting? Shoot horses.
I shoot horses. No, actually, this past weekend, I went up to NC State. They had a vet farrier clinic going on there. Podiatry-based clinic going on Saturday. And so I went to it. Dr. Raul Bross from Rude and Riddle was speaking, and I figured since Raul was going to be there, I'd go catch up with him.
Nice.
Had a nice little chat.
Did you go to lunch with him?
Well, we kind of all ate lunch as a mob. You know?
That's the best way to eat lunch. Mob mentality. Just
fighting over each other's bones and everything.
You can eat that, and grabbing it.
Yeah, exactly. But no, it was a good time, and I talked to Raul about coming up and spend a little time with those guys up there, and he says, if you're coming up, I'm putting you to work. And I was like, all right, even better. So it was a good deal. It was caught up with some friends who always go to educational stuff, and it's the same ones over and over and over. And for something of that caliber, like always, people that did not go really missed a good program.
Did you talk to him about getting him on the show or anything?
That is one of the next things we're going to discuss. Yes.
All right. Well, good. You had a good time. Fellowship was had by all.
Fellowship was had by all. Caught up with Dr. Mansman, Raul, some farrier friends of mine that I see a few times a year, and
so during
that was it.
So during the break, we actually had a fellowship had by all here on the property. So on our property, we have horses that stay. We have, a couple pastures out there. I've got Dominique, which is my mare,
right?
That we're going to turn into a brood mare. We lost Pepper past year. She was a miniature horse. What's the difference between a miniature horse and a miniature pony? Is it the same thing or just different terminology?
Depends on who you talk to.
Okay, so we had a miniature horse, and then the miniature horse gave birth to another miniature horse. So we have Cayenne, who's left here on the property.
Right.
And Diego is out being trained somewhere else off-site because of the snow and rain that we have here. Our arena just doesn't hold up. So we have motion cameras outside because we have these horses and everything on our property.
Right.
And 4:25 a.m., I got a notice on my phone. There's a motion at the side door. Well, at that time, we had a horrible rainstorm that came through, and I just kind of shook it off as the trees were in front of one of the cameras or something like that. I really didn't, I just kind of canceled, ignore, and then went on. So the next morning, my wife and I, we go out to feed the horses and throw hay and do all that stuff. And between our concrete driveway and the actual pasture fence is probably about 6 feet
Right.
of grass. And we noticed that there were these hoof prints or footprints of sorts up and down around the pasture. And I kind of said, babe, what are these? And she looked, she's like, oh, those, I know those. Those are horse footprints. Now, I don't know horse footprints from a cow footprint. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So we walked around, and they literally, the trail went around the front pasture, which is about an acre, all the way around, and then stopped, and then turned back around following the tracks, and they went the other direction, and they went all the way down to the barn, which is, 2 acres down, and then came all the way back. And then I looked by the front door where the camera is, and there's a big pile of horse poo. So someone's horse got out and ran over to our place,
Came out for a visit.
and was being buddy with our horses. And sure enough, we have a guy who lives kind of catty corner from us here.
Right.
He's got 16 acres. He inherited from his mom when she passed away, and he's in the process of buying and selling horses. So he had a couple horses and 16 acres for one man to take care of, make sure every fence is mended, every, wire is tied. One of his horses, his little chestnut gelding, came out
Somebody went on a road trip.
and went on a road trip across the street to ours and basically just hung out, which is my wife's biggest fear is a tree falling on the fence and the horse just taking off, because it's happened before.
Right.
And because there's no other horses in the vision of the horse to buddy up with. So this horse, I guess, broke out, saw all horses and said, hey, they look like
Hey, we got friends.
they look like me. I'm going to go over there and talk to them. So that's what happened. It was so funny. We texted him back. He's like, yeah, in the middle of the night, one of the horses broke free, and we went over there to gather him up and bring him back. So
Yep. You're talking about the minis and the distinctions between a horse and a pony. There are some. I've had it explained to me. On my end, they're little, but there are some explanations as to what the difference would be.
it's kind of like the difference between a mule and a donkey and a jackass. I mean, one is sterile, one is not sterile. One is the combination of a horse and a mule.
Yeah. Well, these are all horse, are all derived from some of the same blood, but I don't know. It's one of those things. I don't breed them. I don't sell them. I just work on them. And just when people explain this to me, I'm like, cool, and keep going.
Now, if you'd like to be part of the show, we'd love for you to be part of Season 5. The way you do that is if you'd like to ask Mike Stine any questions, email Mike Stine at equinedynamics.com. At the top of the page says contacts. Fill out that little form there, and we'll answer your questions right here on the air. And if we don't get to it on the air, Mike will physically write you a letter back and answer your question via email. And don't forget, for every podcast we do, we have a matching video. You can see me waving to Mike waving to me. I've got some new lighting here in the studio, so I'm playing with it. So if you see me in the video kind of fumbling around here, I've got a light deck that I'm trying to get all the new lighting here all situated. A lot of big things happening here in Season 5, Mike. You got a lot of people lined up that are coming into the studio that are going to be being a part of the show via video chat and also telephone calls. Lots of telephone calls during the show. So make sure you like, subscribe, and do all that stuff over YouTube, and share your podcast with all your friends and stuff, because we are the #1 podcast to create sounder horses from the ground up. I've noticed that. All right, that's my new moniker.
That's what we're going for.
That's our goal, is to be the #1 podcast to create sounder horses. All right, guys, when we come back, I bought something for Mike.
You did.
To start Season 5, and I'll get into that when we come back. Stick around. You listen to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. He'll be right back. Welcome back to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. He was the official farrier of the 2018 World Equestrian Games. And like I said, if you'd like to be part of our show, Season 5, you can jump in at any time and ask us any questions. We'll read them here on the air. The way you do that is go to equinedynamics.com. At the top of the page says contact us. Fill out that little form. Make sure you put a return address, because Mike, if we read your question on the air, Mike will actually send you out some free swag for being a part of the show, just to say thank you.
We've run out of swag pretty quick.
Well, guess what, Mike? I actually got some new swag for us. Now, if you're watching us here on the YouTube video, Mike has
brought you some swag.
Brought me a swag bag. It says the International Hoof Care Summit 20 anniversary. So there's my little swag tote. You can see all the sponsors on there. You can see Equine Dynamics as well. And then this is what I got for you. Now, the only reason why I put it in a crinkle bag, strictly for radio effect. So It makes noise when you open it. So open that up.
Boy, is crinkling.
So this is the new swag. That's coming out.
The new swag.
So
we've got Equine Dynamics coasters.
So hold them up to the camera so everyone can see right there in front of you.
Okay.
You got it upside down, Mike.
Oh, okay.
You'll never be in a Pepsi commercial.
Pepsi.
Label to the camera.
Pepsi commercial.
There you go. So there's your new Equine. Open those up. Let me see. Open one up so everyone can see what it is. Bear with us. Don't lose them. There you go. So next time you're having that beverage and you're sitting back on the back patio, watching the sunset, listening to Equine Dynamics on whatever podcast you're listening.
Equine Dynamics coaster.
You can put your drink on your Equine Dynamics coaster and enjoy the show as well. So there you go. I'll put it on this camera here. So there you go. New coasters for you to have.
You had it sideways.
Oh, and to get yours, just ask Mike a question. We'll read it on the air and answer it as well. And we'll send those out to you as well. Now, Mike, one of the questions that we have is the implications of being towed in or towed out and the difference for a young horse and versus a mature horse. So let's talk about towed in and towed out.
Well, this kind of goes back on some of Raul's talk at NC State this weekend, talking about angular limb deformities, and that's part of angular limb deformities. And we're not really talking at this point about flexor tendon deformities, which would be contracted or too lax and the pastern sitting on the ground or that sort of thing. More, towed in, towed out, misalignments to the knee, all that sort of deal.
Now, when I hear towed in and towed out, I think of, I had an old Volkswagen Bug, and the wheels actually had to be towed out, the toe for the front wheels to be aligned. I think that they were towed in and out. Is that kind of the same principle as far as the front axle to keep to keep it in line?
A little bit, but they don't have, horses do not have a front axle.
No,
they don't. But a little bit, yes. And, looking at babies when they're born, I used to work on some babies. Now, Raul up there.
Now, we're talking baby horses, right? Not actual human babies.
Horses, yes.
You have to clarify.
Baby horses, we must clarify. Raul up there in Lexington, they got so many breeding farms that they see a lot of this. And used to be earlier on, when I was working on babies, people would go, we need to do something. But it's kind of gotten to where the few breeders that I have gone more, well, let's let it grow up and see what we need to do. Well, there's a time window on each joint working up the leg where you can and cannot move things and work on alignment. The other thing is when babies are first born, they come out twisted, crooked, and they need to get out and move around and stretch tendons and ligaments and see what, the horse is going to do. And so he was saying that he's got some people that the day they're born, they want to start working on the baby. He's like, let's give it a couple weeks. Let's let the baby move around. Let's reassess at that point. And you've got other people who will wait till 90 days and 120 days and that sort of deal. And it's like we've overshot the window.
Has anyone used this term, let the fold unfold? Does that make sense?
You just created some new terminology there for us there, Travis.
So
that'll be your thing.
There you go.
Let the foal unfold. But no, that actually works.
I mean, it makes sense because I would think, and like I said, I'm the simpleton. I fix the horse what the horses break. My wife's the one who does all the horse stuff. So I would think that would be a term that
you fix the fences.
I do.
Let the foal unfold. Yeah, that's a good one. We need to work with that. That can be your thing.
Okay, there you go.
Unfolding foals.
Audio stamp right here. Audio trademark.
But yeah, and then where I see it is more on performance horses that are a little older, and we've got a joint that's a little misaligned, and then we've got to keep them working at best we can. So, like the babies, if you don't, it's like working on straight legs. People look at them, and I used to when I was doing halter horses a long time ago, they'd look at the stand in front of the horse's head, and they'd want the front feet pointed dead straight when they were little. And the problem was at that point you can turn the pastern and everything will move. And then they mature, and when babies are little, their shoulders are aimed out, so that they're little narrow-chested things, and then they build stabilize. And then when they we've turned the feet in to here, from here to here, and then the shoulders open up, and all of a sudden we end up here.
You can see Mike demonstrating on his hands and on the video here.
From here,
right.
Straight the legs, straight with the body, and then the shoulders open.
There you go.
And then you end up toed in. And, you know, at that point, it's like, ooh, we got a problem. And they're like, you messed up our horse. And the trainer or whoever is insisting, oh, they got to be pointed dead straight. You need to drop this, do that. What you got to do is look at where that leg is aimed, not where the body is aimed at that point in development, and work around that. Because, you know, dropping a heel to force a leg to turn on the baby is we want to square things up if need be. And getting them out running and stomping and stretching, and they're twisted up and mangled up and all kinds of weird positions when they're in mama, and they come out, and it takes a little while to unfold the foal.
See, I got something there.
You got to unfold the foal and give them a chance to get up, move around. And if you go back on some of the work that Ovanak and Bowker had done with, you know, paying attention to the wild horses and moving babies and what was happening with them with leg straightness and tendon ligament development later on, you know, keeping babies shut up in the stall, they need to get out moving. And that's been looked at in past.
Are you familiar with the Olive Branch horse breeding farm or something that's about 5 miles up the road on the right-hand side? They breed, what's the horse that pulls the carriage?
There's a lot of standard breds over there, and they foal out horses for people.
Right.
Those horses are brought in there for foaling purposes, and they manage them. And I know people who have used them for foaling out horses besides standard breds.
Now, have you done any work for them over there?
No, I have not worked for them.
Do you know who works for them?
I do not.
Okay, so you haven't had any kind of conversation as far as how those horses are being developed or anything like that? Okay.
No, but they've been doing it a long time. They have a good reputation for it, and they've foaled out a lot of horses for a lot of people, and they're managing it. They've got people there that are used to it. They've got their vets and whoever else they use.
Now, one of the things, the reason why we bring this up is because we're thinking about having Dominique, our brood, that's going to be a brood mare.
Right.
We're going to send the DNA down to, I think, Texas University to make sure that she matches up with someone so that the baby doesn't have the problems that she having. Not that she has extreme amount of problems. She's still a good riding horse.
Right. But
there's some little stuff, you know, instead of brown eyes, we want blue eyes. Not that extreme, but that's what we're trying to get into. We're trying to make sure
you want a blue-eyed horse.
It'd be nice if there was a blue-eyed horse. It'd be millions of dollars. But the little defects, the small, minute differences that Dominique would have, we don't want to pass on to the foal.
I think that would be responsible. You know, so many years we bred horses, and we were dealing with, well, Mama's a good horse. We can't ride her anymore, so it's breed her. So there was some breeding that was a little irresponsible for long-term soundness of the horse. And that kind of led into a bunch of horses being reproduced that were not at the best for the breed.
And not taking care of the toe in and toe out right away.
Right. And on my end of it, you know, if you got a horse that's a little offset and then you got to pay attention to, you know, ideally you want to look where the foot's aimed. If the foot was aimed in the right place and you're dealing with breakover at that point. Problem is if you got some of these horses that are a little too far in, a little too far out as far as the toe direction, and you need to pay attention to where the knee is aimed, because that's where they're naturally going to want to lean a little bit closer to that on the breakover, meaning that's the way the whole bone column will want to roll. And if you got a toed in horse, if you try to square it up where the frog is aimed and it's toed in hard, the foot's still going to want to roll in the direction where the knee is aimed. And so you're going to have to work around that with shoeing the horses for performance, because what we're trying to do is look at, you know, when I watch a horse, it's okay, where are we losing energy in the movement pattern? Where are we struggling? Where are we losing energy? What can we do to help clean that up? Now, on that really toed in horse, you can put a lateral toe extension in and try to push the foot more across the center of the foot where the foot's aimed. But is that appropriate for the rest of the bone column? And I'm not saying that there's not times if these collapse to the outside too much and you're throwing stress on tendons and ligaments, this undue stress on your collateral ligaments, maybe you do need to put a little bit of extension or a little more of a support to one side because of the alignment. So that's just a foot, just looking at that foot. And then, okay, your toed in, toed out horse, they'll tend to paddle. Okay. You'll have horses that are paddling that aren't necessarily toed in. Some of that's because they're not tracking straight. And you've got a horse that's toed in harder on one side than the other. It's pretty easy for them not to track, dog track, where the body, when they're trotting out, their body is, the front end's not lining up with the back end. Well, if their body, when you're watching a horse track, you need to look all the way through to the back feet when he's coming at you. If you're watching them trot away, you've got to look through to the front feet, because if I've got a strange movement pattern in a limb, is that because I've got a misalignment in the limb, or is that because he's carrying his body in an odd position and he's doing this as a counterbalance or a counter maneuver? Because if I've got the horse canted to one side and the chest is aimed not where we're going, that outer leg's going to have to swing around to reach out in front of him. And you'll get some, if I'm swinging out in the back end, you'll get a counter swing in the back end.
All right, guys, stick around.
They'll kind of rotate in not a normal position. So part of that is getting the horse's self-tracking straight.
All right, guys, stick around. We were talking about, Mike mentioned something about a breakover. When we come back, we're going to talk about measuring the pressure of a flexor tendon as related to a breakover position. Stick around. You're listening to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. He'll be right back.
Sorry, I was running over you.
No.
To the end of my point.
No, that's fine. Yeah, sometimes I don't know when your point is done, so I just kind of, I find my window.
Right.
Okay, stop.
You got to go for it.
Yeah. You ready?
Yes, sir.
Welcome back to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. He was the 2017 American Venting Championship Farrier. And you can also follow Mike Stine on Facebook. And the way you do that is search Equine Dynamics Mike Stine on your Facebook feed. Make sure you like and subscribe to him over there as well. And we were talking about, last segment, you were talking about the toe in and toe out.
Right.
Mike is, a few weeks back, we were talking about the Pegasus discussion.
Right.
Where the Pegasus, this horse, had, what would you call those feet? Elf feet or something?
He had flippers.
Yeah, he did have flippers. And there's an awesome story that Mike wrote up about the Pegasus discussion, and listened to a few shows back, and we get into the way Pegasus was basically just fighting for her life, and the way her legs are in the feet. It's an amazing story.
It was a him, and he
did, yeah.
He didn't know anything was wrong with him.
He just thought that's the way it was.
That's just the way it was.
Now, Mike, you were talking about the breakover position for a hoof on new babies that are coming out. Now, measuring the pressure of the flexor tendon as related to this breakover position. So explain that for us.
Okay, when I'm looking at an x-ray and we're dropping a line down off the tip of that coffin bone, and we're trying to figure out where we are in position on the breakover. If you got a nice little roll coming down the front of the foot, you can roll that right up to the tip of the coffin bone, just like your shoes. If your shoes were flat all the way out to the front edge, you'd have a tough time walking, right?
I have a tough time walking no matter what.
Well, I didn't want to bring that up. I've seen you, and I just,
I don't want to say anything to hurt your feelings.
Yeah, I will, but we'll do that off the air.
Right.
But you think about that foot being flat all the way to that front edge.
Uh-huh.
Okay, if that shoe is flat all the way to the front edge, what is it doing from that point forward, from the ball forward? Basically, let's think about the tip of that coffin bone and the way the ball of your foot works, right? Okay, if that was flat all the way forward and you didn't have that forward lever is removed, makes walking kind of awkward. It does for a horse too. Now, I'm not saying that all of them need to be backed up. And there again, you got a horse that's over at the knee pretty hard. Sometimes if you back it, bring it back to those parameters, he can't stabilize his knee. So there's a different thing to throw in there. But that horse probably is not a high-end performance horse. And I do have horses that have something odd going on with the knee where they can't straighten a leg out all the way. And you need enough support on those horses so that they can stand up without fighting that knee. So, but when you're looking at, they've figured out a way to measure tendon pressure on your flexor tendon. And the numbers were a millimeter forward. Each time you add a millimeter forward on breakover, you're adding an extra 110 pounds of force roughly in this average size riding horse against that flexor tendon. If you've got, if you've got a foot that's really distorted and that is way forward, and I've had horses where if you look on the radiographs an inch forward, to break that down to millimeters, think about what you're doing to that tendon.
So you're talking about actually measuring it. Is there a machine that does it, that you put like pads on the horse's feet, like you would have on your brain if they want to measure your brain waves? You're putting something on a horse's feet to actually measure, or is it a pad that they physically step on that would transfer that information to a computer or something?
Well, there are some pressure pads that have been developed. I know that Mitch Taylor has worked with dead legs and putting them under pressure, and I may be a little off based on that, but I think Mitch was pretty well involved in that, in a lot of that. And, on dead legs, you can put force and add sensors into the tendons if need be. I'm sure I'm not a computer techie, and this is way out of my pay grade talking about techie stuff. That's like your fancy lights that change colors.
I know, they're nice.
No way, I can get a light bulb change colors, unscrew one, screw another one in.
It's too much work. Up and down a ladder, I'll fall.
That's right. So, and then if you're looking at the whole foot is constricted in the back and the foot itself is migrated forward, another force on that flexor tendon is on landing, holding the bone column up. And is that bone column collapsing hard, and how fast can it recover from the collapse? And that's something that I watch when I see a horse move, is that there's always going to be a collapse down a recoil. Is that sticking, or is that recoiling fast enough? So if I've got a base that is mechanically moved out from under center, it's not just the breakover, it's support phase also. So that's just a little bit of it. And, if you've got one that everything is run way far forward, a lot of tendon pressure, sometimes that pastern will stand up and it'll break. It'll hit in the hoof pastern axis itself when you see that joint broken backwards, and you'll end up with a low palmar angle and a straight up pastern where, if you see that alignment, you may have 7 or 8 or 10 degrees offset between the coffin bone angle and the short pastern angle. When you start realigning that, you're not necessarily moving it 10 degrees. You may move it 4 or 5 degrees, and then you're changing pressure. And then not only you're bringing up the angle of the coffin bone itself, the pastern itself is settling back into more of a normal position. So you're moving on both parts.
So if you have 100 horse owners that all do the same type of riding, we'll just take my wife because she does dressage, so I know dressage riders, okay? If you take 100 dressage riders with their horses, not all the same horses, but with their horses, should they know this information, or are they relying on you as a farrier, a good farrier, to recognize these type situations?
They're relying on farrier, they're relying on trainer. The long toe, low hill horse, they're going to tend to lock the shoulder. And you're going to have bracing, and this gets back into Ray Morrison massage and the body work. You're going to have bracing in front of the scapula up high, and this horse is going to hollow out behind in the back of the withers. The back will drop. Now, on the very other end of that, if I've got a foot placed in a very nice place for the bone column, if I sit somebody on top and they're riding the face too hard, they lock the shoulders. If they lock the shoulders and they drop the back and the hind end's not coming through, we're not picking off the front end, that on its own, I just created a lot more flexor tendon pressure because he can't get moving and get off of it, or she, or whatever it may be. So you're fighting forces from the top, you're fighting forces from the bottom. Now, when you look at what happens to the foot when you're fighting all those forces from the top, if you're always chasing it, and if you're not bringing that to the right parameters, it's going to drive that foot down and shoot the toe out the front because of the pressure from what the body's doing. So it is all directly tied together.
So how much does the rider influence how that works? Or does it at all?
I got a cute little story.
Okay, go ahead. We got time.
I had some years back, I had a daughter that was showing and a mother that just relaxed and trail rode. They swapped horses because the show horse started coming up with navicular type issues in the front end, right? Got a new show horse. Mama's horse over time front end cleaned up, but Mom relaxed on the horse. Mom did try to push the thing, went out trail riding up and down hills through the terrain and all that. Let the horse be a horse. Stayed up, wasn't a lot of pressure on the face, all this sort of stuff. The other horse, well, we're going into collection and we're pulling a collection. So where does collection coming off, the front end or the back end? Okay. If you're working off the front end, you'll lock them up. Over time, the show horse started coming up with similar problems. Swap the horses back. The older show horse became the show horse. Again, because the front end problems had cleaned up, but the horse never was pressured into position. And guess what happened when horses got swapped back? Same thing over again.
So Mama was doing the right job and the daughter was doing the wrong job.
I'm not going to say that Mom was necessarily a top end rider, but Mom was relaxed on the horse, and the horse was allowed to move relaxed, and the horse was not pushed into a frame. Or pulled it, let's say pulled into a frame. Pushed into a frame would be more correct, because they would be pushing from behind, pushing into the frame. But if they're pulled into a frame and the face is overridden, and they will lock up in the shoulders. Someone who is not as balanced in the saddle as they should be will end up putting more pressure on the reins and nose than need be, because they're dependent on the reins for balance. So if you take the reins away from them, they become unstable in the seat because you threw the reins away. Let's just take your hands off of them altogether, and you start becoming unstable as far as your riding position. Guess what? You're using the reins for balance. And if you're using the reins for the balance, you're locking up the horse.
Now, my wife has a trainer, Brett Ingram.
We know Brett.
And my wife actually will, lesson with Brett and everything. And then once out of every maybe 6 weeks, or every 6 lessons, maybe 8 lessons, because I think she rides with him twice a week, she'll make Brett get on the horse.
She should.
So he can feel
the horse,
what she is feeling or dealing with. So
right. And Brett, I've known for a long time. If something odd's going on with a horse, he'll pick up the phone and call me. Or the trainers that I work with a lot, if my event trainers, if there's a problem, something odd going on with a horse, when I pull in the barn, I'm going to get addressed about it. Becky, I will know everything that's going on with a horse. When I pull in and Becky comes to me and says, I feel this. Will you check this? Take a look at this. And you better be on your money, because Becky knows what she's talking about. I'm talking about Becky Holder, the eventer.
Right.
And so, yes, you've got people who know their horse. Now, I have people that come to me all the time about horses that are like, well, my horse is whatever, and I don't know, and I've watched them ride, and I'm like, well, all righty then, and I'm going to take a look at your horse, look at some wear patterns, look at the muscling, look at the back position. Can we take a look at your saddle? Well, I just bought this new saddle. It's wonderful. I had one here recently that they bought a new saddle that was extremely comfortable for the owners, but the way it was put underneath, and this goes back to Ray Morris and what he taught me about saddles, and Ray had me flocking saddles and measuring for him some. But I flipped the saddle over, and I started filling down the saddle, and I'm like, well, it's just such a wonderful saddle. This saddle was not built for a horse. You need to, well, my saddle fitter's coming out. Well, there's some problems under here having to do with the way the tree is built that I can feel all the way through everything underneath the saddle, and like there's a ridge across there. And well, my saddle fitter is coming. Well, flip this thing upside down and show it to your saddle fitter before y'all go any further. Just tell it, which your saddle fitter should do anyway. But I was like, your horse feels this when you're on that horse and you're rocking, and you're not necessarily that stable a rider, and it may be extremely comfortable for you, but your horse is going to object to this. All right, and there again, you just lock the shoulders up again.
All right, guys, stick around. When we come back, what do we mean when we talk about having or creating a sound horse? We'll get into that in just one sec. You're listening to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. He'll be right back.
I did that intentionally.
I know.
We'll try to do it to you again.
Yeah, I might have to trim out the last probably 4 or 5 minutes of that, because we kind of got off topic of the flexor tendon, but that's okay. But go ahead.
Hey, Travis.
Oh, hi. We didn't start yet. Now we are. Welcome back to Equine Dynamics. Hold on. You got me all sideways now. Hold on. Welcome back to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine, the #1 podcast to create sounder horses from the ground up. And what do we mean by that? Over my far hand side is Mike Stine, and we'll explain that. Hi, Mike. How are you?
I'm doing good, Travis. How you doing?
You look good. You look good. You look well rested. Your hair looks good.
Yeah, I ran my hand through it after the shower. That's how I comb it.
You look good.
Shake my head, you know.
Now, we are striving to be the #1 podcast to create sounder horses from the ground up. But what does that mean? What does it mean to be a sounder horse? So we have right now we're going to talk terminology. What does the word sound and unsound mean, Mike? So when we say a sound horse, are we talking about the whinny of the horse when it nickers at you?
They do sound good sometimes.
They do. And my wife, like I said, we go out feed every morning, and I always get this every time we come out.
Pretty good sound, isn't it?
Yeah, because they know that food's coming. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a sound horse. Like, what does it mean? What does that term mean when you say sound horse?
Not lame, not a clumsy mover. When I'm looking at a horse, and from a farrier's perspective, we'll talk about from a farrier's perspective. When I see a horse move, am I looking at something that long-term is going to be easy to keep sound and happy? Or am I looking at some movement patterns that down the road are going to lead to not sound? And that's where I'm thinking, because I need to making adjustments around what I see in front of me. Is this a good use of energy or a bad use of energy? Moving good, not moving good. Moving good is free flowing, clean, minimal impact. Bad moving, they're hitting the ground hard, and in parts of the in some phases of the movement pattern, there may be a little struggling to get the horse moving, just as getting over the breakover. Do we have a collapse in the pasture? Do we have an odd rotation? Is the horse tracking in a straight line? What does the body look like? Are there places where we have atrophy in the muscles that should not be? Are there places where muscles are braced and locked up where they should not be? And what are we going to have to do? Where am I going to have to start thinking in how I prep what I do to the horse's foot and to whatever application I put on the horse's foot? Or do we need to think about training or whatever it may be?
Now, at any time, can a horse be 100% sound? Or is it always, this horse is always is there a level of measurement? Like this horse is about 85% sound, a 95% sound, or, the worst case scenario, it is what they consider unsound.
Well, in my mind and where I work, I'm looking for nitpick. And what hopefully makes me good at making decisions is the ability to nitpick through a lot with a horse in a hurry. So if you look at from the farrier's end of it, what is completely sound, it'd be hard to find it.
Because you're always trying to improve what you're already working on.
Always, we're looking for better. Is there somewhere I can adjust and be better? Always. If I'm not doing my job.
So there's not 100% sound horse out there.
Not if somebody is working on performance, if somebody's working on soundness, if somebody is working on that from the farrier's point of view, there's a little glitch somewhere that I need to be thinking about when I'm working on that horse. And that's shod or unshod. It doesn't matter. And some of it is as simple as you walk the horse in the barn and learning from like Ray being blind. Did I hear an odd slap when he stepped onto that concrete and one foot landed up square and another one is slapping? You hear that, or a shuffle or a slide or something. It's like, where'd that come from? And, when we had Trish on here, I know that they had 2 aisleways in the barn, big barn, when we were working Whitehaven, and horses coming in on the other side, and I said something to her. It's not your horse, don't worry about it, because I heard something when he hit that concrete coming in on the other side of the barn. This barn was huge. He hit that. It's like, ooh, that doesn't sound right. He's hitting heavy on one side. He's got an odd shuffle, whatever. He's just, don't worry about it. It's not your horse. I was like, something didn't sound right. Mm-hmm. And, that is one of our senses we use to start picking up on an odd movement pattern. Another thing, if you got in your arena and looking at the dirt is disturbed when a horse moves out? Are they flinging a lot of dirt off the ground on one side and not so much the other? Why? And it's like going back to Tony Gonzalez. It's like you answer this one question all the way through the horse and you'll have it. From the nose to the tail, from the tail to the nose, from the feet to the back, and from the back down. Why? Every time you see something odd, why? There's always a why. Okay, what caused that? Why? Okay, this, and this. Shoulders locked. Why is shoulder lock? Why? Okay, we got, he's not working on the diagonal hind. Why? Is that because shoulder, front end, back end? What is it? And, you know, we're getting these big discussions of, well, this happened first. Well, a lot of times to me, you got to focus on the motor to get the front end right. And people say, well, he was lame in the front end first. And to me, I think motor. Got to think about the hind end. And it really doesn't matter which started, chicken or egg or whatever. Could have been somebody set off to one side in the saddle, because it's real easy for me as a farrier to not sit even in a saddle if I ride a horse because of me being twisted and mangled and beat up and old injuries. So if you're shifting your weight oddly, the horse ends up doing something to hide that and end up beating up part of his body for long term. To me, that's early on. It's like something's not right there. Is that going to lead towards unsoundness?
So the definition of sound is a horse with no lameness or illness. Now, definition of being unsound is an abnormal deviation of the structure or action of the horse that can render it partly or completely useless. Therefore, any defect that affects serviceability is considered unsoundness, lameness, blindness, faulty wind, and so on and so forth. So tell me, can a horse recover based on the definition? Can it go from being unsound, or is that the one all kill all of that horse? And I hate to use the word kill all, but
no, all horses on some level are a constant rehab. And you know, in my way of looking at it, I've worked in the rehab end of it, therapeutic, for a long time, and I've been doing a lot of performance horses, but there's always something that we're chasing, and you got to figure out, where are we in our competition schedule? Can we make changes now or not? And it's a balancing act between can and can'ts. So there are plenty of horses. Okay, let's look at your wife's dressage horse, her new dressage horse.
Diego, the gelding.
Diego drags a little bit in his back end. Would somebody call him lame? He's not falling down. He's not gimping. He's not limping. But he has been dragging a bit in the back end. Now, with a few changes, and Diego is unshot. And changes in the work routine, changes in what we're doing with the horse, making sure we're staying as tuned up with normalizing the pressure within the hoof as we can, and keeping moving with it, chasing any kind of distortions we may get. He's getting better. And we're going back and forth between Brett and myself on where we're thinking. And he's getting stronger in the back end, and he's starting to clear the ground. He's starting to engage. He's a young horse. He's learning to use himself.
He's four and a half years old, I think.
Right. And he's not at a place where he's been pushed on anything yet. And, you know, if we can change and work around, can I do something shoeing the horse at this point to help stabilize that situation? Yes, I can. Is it appropriate all the time to go to that? No, it's not.
So you don't see shoes in the future for Diego?
No, I'm not saying that.
Oh, darn it. I was trying to get out of as inexpensive as I can.
Because we've got to make sure that we have a reason for you to keep working, so that you keep doing my podcast for me. And if you don't have to spend money on horses, you don't necessarily have to do this. So I got to keep you engaged in having to work.
Right. It's my social ticket.
Just try to help you out for my own benefit.
Yeah, it's my social ticket.
But, you know, when you start working for the elevated maneuvers that we're looking at this horse to have the ability to do, are we going to have to support the bone column? It's not about the feet so much at this point. It's about the bone column function. Can he do the elevated maneuvers and have the proper bone column function with everything, with what he's dealt to work with? And can we do something to help keep the joints working better, the bone column stabilized better, and all that. And on the younger horse, one of the things we have to look at is, the hoof itself is developing until a horse is about 6 years old. Do we want to retard that? Because the lateral cartilage is the plantar cushion, all the structures in there are developing. If you shut down development on your digital cushion, your plantar cushion, all that too fast, you end up with it becomes more fibrous and stronger as the horse ages if it's used. If it's not, sometimes you can retard that. And we do not want to retard that for longevity of this horse.
So a horse never truly is completely 100% unsound. It's just a different level of being soundness. Is that safe to say? There's a lot of different
levels of soundness. And what are we asking this horse to do for performance? And my goal is always horses should be retired because of old age, not unsoundness.
All right, guys, stick around. We're going to do one more segment and wrap up the show. You're listening to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. He'll be right back. Oh, I got a yawn coming off. Don't look, or you're going to yawn too.
I'm already there.
My coffee was wearing off. We have a new coffee pot.
You need a tougher coffee pot that makes stronger coffee.
Well, the first time my dad, because my dad would go, okay, we had the single one with the little K-cups.
Right.
So he put it in there and let it go, and that's what you got. Now we're going back to grounds and, a craft. And he did 2 full scoops of the grounds, and I took a sip of the coffee, and I'm like, no, that's way too. So we're trying to find that balance of how much grounds.
And now you did half a scoop, and you need more.
Yeah, so we got to add a little bit more on top of it. So it's a balance. We just got it like 2 weeks ago, so this is like day 14 of trying to figure out what's the balance of this coffee pot. You ready?
Yep.
Okay. Welcome back to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. He is now a licensed thoroughbred farrier through the Kentucky Horse Racing Commission. And if you'd like to be part of the show, we'd love for you to be part of Season 5. Get on board right now. Like and subscribe and share us from wherever you're listening to us at. And also, don't forget, for every podcast we do, we have a matching video. You can see me waving to Mike here in the studio, Mike waving to me. We'll have a whole bunch of people coming here in the studio. We're going to have a bunch of live video chats as well, so you can be part of that. And the way you can be part of that to get your questions into Mike is to email him at equinedynamics.com. At the top of the page says contacts. Fill out that little form, and Mike will send you out this new free swag stuff we got. We got these new, hold it, Mike, you got to do the advertisement here. The new drink coasters that we have with the
I can see it good.
No, you got the back there. There you go.
How's that? Is that better?
The new Equine Dynamics drink coaster. So when you're sitting out back, sipping your sweet tea and watching the sunset, listening to the podcast, you have something to reflect on and show all your friends. And Mike's got a bunch of stickers and stuff, a couple stickers and stuff left over. I know all the keychains are gone, so we'll order some.
I like the way you say sweet tea.
Yeah, sweet tea. And over to our far right side is Mike Stine.
How are you doing, Travis?
Doing well. Now, what did we learn today? We were talking about the implications of being towed in and towed out. The difference between on a young horse versus a mature horse.
There are definitely time windows you need to work within on a young horse. On an older horse, you need to figure out where everything's aimed and the whys of it as far as the mechanical movement pattern.
All right, and the pressure flexor tendon as related to the breakover position.
Yes, not only breakover, you've got the support phase and how much down pressure you're dealing with against that flexor tendon when you're coming across breakover. How much leverage are you adding by that breakover point migrating forward? And it always migrates forward during the shoeing period, but how the foot is prepped to start with, how much difference that can make in tendon pressure.
And also, talking terminology, the difference between sound and unsound when referring to a horse.
Yes, you'll have some different ideas on that, but from my perspective as a farrier and what I'm trying to do to get the best for your horse, I'm nitpicking to a very small window on what is very good and not where I want it to be.
All right, guys. Well, like I said, make sure you follow us on your podcatchers. And if you'd like Mike Stine to come out and perform a clinic at your location, go to equinedynamics.com. At the top of the page says clinics. Fill that up, and it'll come out to your event or your location. And you can have us right there on your property discussing the same things and the topics that we discuss here on Equine Dynamics. Our goal this season, is to become the #1 podcast to create sounder horses from the ground up. On that note, guys, I'm going to let you get back to enjoying the rest of your day. I didn't say that.
You were close. You were close.
No, I'm not going to say that. All right, guys, I'm going to let you get. What am I going to say? I don't know. I don't know how to wrap up the show.
Get out there and have fun with your horse.
All right, get out there and have fun with your horse. On behalf of Mike Stine over there,
have a good one, Travis.
My name is Travis Holmes, saying see you next week. Did you make that up? Get out there and have fun with your horse?
Just immediately.
I love that.
Sounded good.
Yes, get out there and have fun with your horse.
Somebody else may have said that, but I don't remember.
I'll write that down. And have fun with your horse. With your horse. There we go. I'll say that next time. Now we have now we actually have a slogan. Slogan. All right.
Good night, Ned.